Amanda, welcome aboard to the show. So happy to have you here today.
Happy to be here. It's a great way to finish my Friday.
Oh my God, it's I hope so. I hope so. Let's see if we can have some fun. Okay, I don't think most of our audience knows what EDO is. What even is EDO and why do we need it?
Yeah, economic development is a lot of things, and I think people can be really good at some parts and not good at other parts. And so I'll kind of give an overview. Like the purely capitalistic perspective is that economic development is helping cities, counties, states increase their tax base, right? It is increasing your sales tax base, it's increasing your property tax base through whatever means that
Wait,
you
hold on,
have.
hold on. Don't we want to pay
Yeah.
less taxes? Why do we want to increase our tax base? That's weird.
Well, most cities, counties, and states are funded by your taxes. And so all the services that residents really like parks and recreation and nice roads, no potholes, all of that is funded by local taxes. Not all of it. I mean, we do get some income tax that goes through, but my goal is not to do anything about your income tax.
No,
My
okay.
goal is only to do things about your local
Yeah.
taxes.
So this is not about increasing the taxes for individuals. This is about bringing businesses into the city so they pay taxes.
That's right. That's right. And also having a structure and having a system that encourages people to invest in their properties
That's
in their
wonderful. What does
communities,
that what does
right?
that mean? Tell us more about how do you even incentivize a person to do that? What does it even mean?
Well, I mean, there is saying that like you have to have money to make money. And so that is something that is a real challenge in economic development is that a lot of people say, "Hey, that property looks like it's in disrepair. We should get a Trader Joe's. We should get a whatever, right? Something that they really, really want." And what you learn when you're in economic development is that it's not that easy, right? There's so many decisions that go into like site selection for a business to locate into your space, and cities make decisions that make it easier or harder too.
Yes. For example, is there internet? For example, are there roads? For example, is there
Right.
water? For example, is there like it's complicated.
It is. And let's say you have a building that's already in place and it's just empty. Can that business do the business that they want to do there? Or is it zoned incorrectly? What does it look like to have different zoning? And it's interesting because I lived in Poland for like 10 years and they
Nice.
don't really have zoning. So you would have, in an apartment building, you'd have a dentist office next
Yes.
to you.
So
And
okay, so
yeah,
why do we have zoning? Like the
why
Polish
do we
don't need
have
it.
zoning? Well, if you listen to the YIMBY movement, we should have a lot less zoning. But I mean, the primary reason that you have zoning is so that you don't have heavy industry next to homes, so that you have places for specific industries and types of businesses that make it easy to live there and make it pleasant to live there, right? You don't
The
want
zoning
a
is
bar
really
next to a daycare, right?
exactly. So zoning is really about bringing order to the chaos, but
Yeah.
sometimes we go a little too far, and then we need to fix our mistakes. So it's kind of a delicate balance that you need to be very cognizant about it. So you're working on something exciting. How do you even figure out what are the problems that you need to solve? Like, how do you know what the questions are? Forget the answers for a moment.
Yeah, that's a great question. I have been working here for 18 months now, and I feel like I finally am starting to be able to ask the right questions, which is kind of crazy that you can live in a place and be in a place and still not know what it needs and what it doesn't need. So Silicon Valley is a really interesting place because you have residents who are really demanding, right? They're saying, "Hey, we're paying a lot of taxes. We want all of these benefits." People demand a lot, and cities have to respond to that. Otherwise, they will lose those residents, right? There's a
Yes,
lot
this is
of
true.
patchwork of what's going on here. And so Redwood City has traditionally been sort of like the edge of Silicon Valley, right? I was discussing with a broker. He's like, "Oh, it's the barbell. There's Silicon Valley and then there's San Francisco and then there's
Everything
you." And I
else.
was like, "No, no, we're not in the barbell." And he's like, "You're not in the barbell." I was like,
Oh, that's
"Okay."
cruel.
So I know, but I'm working on a marketing slogan, edge of Silicon Valley, edge of innovation. But
I like that.
um Thanks. I came up with that this morning. It felt like very inspired. But, what I'm trying to figure out is how do we balance the needs of large businesses, right? We have a number of tech firms, right? Oracle used to have its headquarters in Redwood City. It no longer does for reasons. We have a lot of businesses who come, especially biotech, that are sort
Mm,
of
yeah,
mid-sized biotech.
yeah.
And so how do they grow here? Or how do we attract somebody who's not
So
mid-size,
so
who's already growing, right?
this is
These are really, really hard
this is a
questions.
really hard question, right? So biotech is a really interesting one. I'll put a plug in here for my wife. She works for a pharma company. It's a weird one. Like, what do you like? How do you even think about what are the needs of a biotech company? And the biotech company at the small, medium, and large is a completely different beast.
Completely. It's not like Office, right? Like a Google,
No.
you might be providing more amenities when you
Yeah.
get bigger,
Yeah.
right? But biotech, your early stage, they don't have funding. They are not this is so exploratory as to
Yeah.
whether it's going to work
Yeah.
that they need really cheap space. And Silicon Valley doesn't have a lot of cheap space.
Yeah. It's
There are
all
certain
about the
places in
PDUFA
Silicon Valley
date.
that have cheaper spaces. But then when they get something that works, then they'll get some funding and then they can move into a nicer space, right? But are those spaces ready? Right. I was talking with one guy and he was like, yeah, so we want to move into this space. He's like, and I think we need a building permit. And I'm like, well, please just hire somebody who knows this. Like be a really good scientist, right? Like know your
You're
limits.
you're
Be a really good
basically you're
scientist and
basically
hire
working with
somebody.
PhDs, right? It's PhDs
Yeah.
and yeah. So yeah, so the magical day is the PDUFA date, right? That's when they figure out if the FDA is into whatever they're doing. And
Yeah.
the magic before that is did they meet their primary key, their prime what's called primary endpoint.
Yeah.
And basically that is the day. That's like when they win the lottery or they're out of business basically.
Yeah. Well, and we've seen so many firms fold in the last,
Yes.
I don't know, 6 months here,
It's a risky
which is
business, pharma,
it
right?
is really risky. It is really risky. And all of a sudden, they were you see these headlines, firm valued at 1 billion or firm valued at,
Uh,
several $100 million
now $2.
shuts. Okay. But hopefully those people have some soft landings, but I don't yeah,
It's
it's a
rough.
very
It's rough.
dynamic place. I
Yes.
have to say. That has been the hardest part of working here is how much things change and how fast they
Yes.
change and that you as economic development have
So
very little
let me ask you
influence over
this,
that.
right? Pharma as an industry to focus on them
Yeah.
is incredibly difficult because they want universities, they want smart people, they want PhDs, they want research facilities. Then when they get bigger, maybe they want manufacturing. Like it's such a weird thing. How do you kind of make those decisions? Because you're not just like, hey, you want to come, come. You kind of want to focus yourself to give the right services to the right people. That's an impossible decision. How do you even do that?
Well, I think you have to look at who you already have and see why are people choosing you now
Yes.
and can you attract more of those kind of people, right? And unfortunately slash fortunately, the industry has really boomed in San Mateo County, right? It started in South San Francisco, and they had a ton of space for also manufacturing, right? I
Right.
mean, Genentech does a lot of manufacturing
Yeah.
there. Gilead does a lot of manufacturing in Foster City. And then as you grow, now you may not be able to grow, right?
Yes.
We have a firm that's in one of our neighborhoods that's called Seaport Center, and they're like this close to FDA approval. And I'm like, okay, well, what happens? Like,
Nothing.
they
We
don't have
leave.
they don't have a space to grow. They don't have a space to
It's
grow
like
in
you
that
do
space right now.
well, and then you're like, this is ridiculous. You do poorly, obviously you do poorly. But even if you do well, then you run into other problems where you just like, well, come on, guys, what are we doing here? This is
I know
really
it's the pain.
difficult.
It's growing pains. It's growing
It
pains.
is. It really
So
is.
it's one thing that I think my neighboring city has done really well is tried to provide the end-to-end service in the redesign of some of their buildings. So they will have cheaper, sort of already built to suit, not built to suit, but like, fully built out spaces that people can use. And then when their firm takes off, they're saying, hey, well, look at this. We have this floor available for a business like yours.
Yeah.
And so we have a big redevelopment that's coming in
So
our
this
Redwood
is
Shores. Yeah, it's like
almost
happening. It's exciting. We're
you're
going to do
almost
the same
panning
thing.
a pipeline, right? So there's all the small companies, only a certain percentage of them will graduate. But if they graduate, that's when they're going to start paying the big bucks. So you don't want to lose them. So you
Correct.
almost need to plan out this conversion between the small to the medium to the large. Like that sounds like a really tough problem. How do you approach that?
Well, I think people are starting to see that that's the way. To quote right, the
This
Mandalorian,
is
I'm
the
talking
way.
about to like quote things. This is the way. You can't have those split across lots of different places. And as you redevelop spaces, you need to plan for people to not have a ton of capital in the beginning, right? You need to plan for that. And so as we redevelop some of our older life sciences properties, we're saying, okay, give me some startup spaces. Give me some larger contiguous spaces. And now give me also some medium spaces where people can grow. I think that's not how it started, right? I mean, there's so much garage ethos in Silicon Valley, which is
Yes.
great. I mean, but it's biotech is more expensive than a garage ethos,
Yeah.
unfortunately, right? You really do need a lot more of an infrastructure to start your biotech
Yeah.
firm.
I can't remember what the numbers were, but there's a really smart PhD. Her name is Moira Guns, and she has a podcast called Biotech Nation. She's like my all-time favorite, I guess, podcaster. I don't know. She's much bigger than a
Oh, I'll have to
podcaster.
check it. Yeah.
And I'm a big biotech fan. And when you're coming to these CEOs, they're becoming, some of them, many of them are becoming more savvy to the level that they want to know, if I come here, especially the second time rounders, like, oh, if I come here, what will happen if I meet my, the endpoints and I need to now manufacture? Like, what's the plan, Phil?
Yeah.
So it's getting tricky, like from a certain perspective, and keep me honest here if you agree, the industry is also forcing you to have a much better plan.
Yes, I would agree with that. Generally, in San Mateo County, manufacturing is way too expensive. In most of the Bay Area, the East Bay
Yes.
still has quite a bit of manufacturing,
Yes.
but like you're not going to see traditional manufacturing.
There is a
We can
little bit of that.
we can still do biotech manufacturing.
There's
The East Bay communities in and around Fremont have done a great job. Fremont, like again, right? These are really well. The reason I'm excited about doing this plan, right, is because when you have a plan, then you can say, "Hey, this is the way we're going. This is who
Yeah.
we're going to brand ourselves as." And Fremont said, "We want to be advanced manufacturing."
Yeah.
And that's why they have Tesla, and
Yeah.
that's why they have, so many other things, right? And now I think Zoox is in Hayward, but like, I mean, they're neighbors. There's this cool stuff going on over
Yeah.
there.
So computer science graduates are having
Yeah,
issues finding jobs.
yeah,
Why is that? Stuff like not Signal, sorry, Cursor, Lovable, all these software can basically generate software at the level of a computer science graduate. So, and the existing engineers who are much more experienced, they're architects, they basically are now more productive because of softwares like Copilot, Cursor, and
hmm
such. So we're starting to see very, very, very early signals of a maybe market crash. And what could potentially be really bad here is that maybe computer science has a problem first. Maybe then accountants have a problem. But I think what's starting to scare the economists is that there's going to be a cascading effect. And what that means is that multiple industries will start to crash at the same time. And what companies do, it's not nice to say, but the first thing they do is they try to save money, so they increase their share price. I don't know how many years after supply and demand will realign again, and then there'll be hyper growth. But there's going to be a really awful period of nobody knows how many years.
yeah.
What do we do?
I mean, what do we do? I think that we need to be talking about it and thinking about it,
Yes.
right?
That's why I do this show.
I went to a local governance summer institute this summer, and we talked about this problem, right? That you've got really impressive tools like Copilot, and
Yes.
also, you can like make it work just for your city. You could pull it on this.
Yes.
And what they're saying is, hey, well, this can write staff reports. This can do the work of management analysts. And I'm like, oh, that's bad because those are typically entry level jobs for
Yes.
somebody who's coming out of college
Yes.
who's learning how cities work and gives them an opportunity to understand, how does this system work, right?
So hold on, hold on. Let me
Computer
just
scientists, right? It's the same, right?
hold
It's
on.
the
So
same.
what Amanda is saying, and this is brilliant, is that if you think about the kind of growth trajectory of juniors into seniors, if you stem the juniors, you're going to have a problem later on. So this is
hmm
basically what's happening in Japan, right? So when you think about the kind of elderly population,
hmm
like, so there's going to be problems we're not even thinking about.
Yeah. Well, it's absolutely true. And I think one of the things that I've seen in economic mobility, and I work with our colleges here, right, is teaching kids how transferable their skills are and
Yeah.
helping them understand that yes, you did learn how to be a computer scientist and you need to learn how to do this, but how can you take it further, or how can you apply those things that you've learned to other things? The problem is that when you go to college, right, most people study things in college that they want to do
Yeah.
or that they think are going to be beneficial for society,
Yeah.
right? And so,
Oh, our college systems are
it's
in trouble. I mean, I didn't think we'll go there today, but they're gonna fail left, right, and center. Some of them are gonna figure it out. I don't know who, but many of them are gonna fail because your want to be student is gonna be like, I get this degree and I can't find a job. That's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I went to Purdue and they're having conversations about like, well, maybe in this budget period we cut our English department. We're not
No,
going to have a master's. No, like they don't have a master's program in creative writing anymore. And
that's
you're
the
like,
wrong program to cut. Can you just tell
I
them that?
agree. I mean, I agree. But it's tough, right? Because there's such this emphasis on, I don't know, it's become transactional, right? Like
Yeah.
college is saying like, I'm paying you for this, and
Yeah.
in exchange, I should get this.
Yes. Yes.
And I think it would be beneficial if we took a less transactional approach to learning, right? That like you learn so that you can think
Yeah.
and
What
you
what's
have a
that word?
bigger
Sorry.
knowledge
Sorry.
base.
We don't what's that mean? I don't know what that means.
I would say that it's so that you have a bigger knowledge base, right? So that you can make connections between basically be
No,
an
the word
AI.
think, is that a
But the
thing?
word
The
think,
word
yeah, I
think,
know
what is
we
that?
don't do a lot of that
We
right
don't
now.
do that.
I mean, that's the whole criticism of a lot of our Gen Z right
Yeah,
now,
it
right?
is.
Is, well, tell me what you want me to do.
Yeah.
Well, what problem do you see? Well, I don't know.
I don't
Just
know
tell me
how
what
I
you
had
want
a
me to do.
conversation with a rabbi yesterday and with an EDO today, and somehow we got to the same topic, the same. So
Because
basically, you're
it's interesting
saying,
because you're thinking about it. And
yeah,
so you're
pass,
driving it
yeah,
this way.
I'm the problem. Now you sound like my wife. I'm the problem. Okay, you're right. You're right. I'm the problem. I'm just giving my wife
Yeah,
shit.
I
She's
know.
wonderful. The question really is not what the answer. What's the answer? The question really is what's the question. So that's totally the completely agree with this. Here's my argument. And please convey this message to Purdue and anybody else, any other university that might be on the verge of making a stupid decision. If the engineers are going to be automated, and what we really need is innovation in order to realign demand with supply, because supply is basically demand is going to go all the way down, and if
Hmm.
supply stays fixed, then all else equals. Sorry for becoming an economist for a second. I am a graduate of
I
University
like
of
that. Yeah.
Chicago. I studied with Nobel laureates. Some of it rubs
Yeah.
off.
Hey, hey, feel that. I mean, I went to the University of Chicago too.
There you go. There you go.
That's
Fellow
our
alumni.
cool kids.
We'll geek out for a second, but not
Yeah.
too long for the audience to be like, no, sorry. So all else equals prices drop. And in this specific model, prices are salary.
Yeah.
Yeesh. So
Well, yeah, it's salary, but or it's positions,
yes,
right? Which freaks out people
yes,
even more, right?
yes,
Because you have, I would say, one of the reasons that a lot of people like to work in government and like to do engineering in government, right, is
yes,
that there's some stability because you are
yeah,
unionized
yeah,
largely, right?
yeah.
Not all of them, but
That's right. Prices are
it's,
sticky.
yeah, but that just I just want to go back to the discussion of like what happens when computer scientists can't find jobs, right? If the computer scientist is using, it's sort of like learning a new technology, right? They can't just rely on the hard skills. They're going to have to rely on the soft skills. And it's going to, I mean, I may be using this term wrong, but it's so much about human centered design, right?
Yes,
Yes, we have processes, but how are
yes,
those people going to interpret those processes? How are people going to use this?
yes.
Are people going to use this,
Amanda, I
right?
think you're brilliant. I'll just say it. I think you're brilliant. But the reason why Purdue is hopefully won't make that mistake is because, in my humble opinion, the future in a world where engineers don't have a job because AI just does it is not a future where we cancel the arts. It's a
Right.
future where actually we need more of the arts to bring in innovation, to bring in human-centric design, to bring in new demand for the supply that is not being met. So my argument actually is that no, we need more literature, we need more arts, we need more people who think different because the future is going to have a lot of tough problems. So we should not be canceling English literature and arts and math and stuff like that. We need more of that because the really tough problems won't be solved in stats or assembly or whatever. They're going to be solved in linear algebra. So all these people that we maybe don't value today, I think they're going to have a comeback. This is like, the Revenge of the Geeks 2.0, basically. This
But
is,
it's a different kind, right? I hear about, it's interesting. I mentioned that I lived in Poland, and the Polish university system is just really different than the U.S. University system, and they're very technical, right? It's like if you get an engineering degree, you study engineering, and you don't really do electives like Americans do electives. And my husband was like, "Yeah, that's smart. Why do I need to waste time and money on these things that aren't going to help me be a better, whatever?" But then you realize how many things are designed without that perspective, and like how much you can learn from reading a book about a different culture and being, oh, that actually is really interesting, huh?
Yeah.
that could actually work here.
I-
You know what I mean? And
yeah.
and and and
Look,
you need that.
I'm a hardcore like computer scientist. Like this is like thesis research behind me. All the books that you see there on the right, there's not one computer science book. Not one.
Good.
There's psychology, there's
Mhm.
business, there's
Mhm.
math,
Mhm.
there's apparently Lord of the Rings.
Hey, any good bookshelf has that.
Hey, so but my point is that, and there's a wonderful company called IDEO, and IDEO, I can't remember who they put out a book called I think it was the Seven Faces of Innovation, Nine Faces, I don't know.
Okay.
But basically they
Feel like I've
detail,
heard about this.
they're
Yeah.
super famous. They're super famous. So they put out this book, and then they basically define different types of innovation, because this is like the
Mhm.
design innovation company, like the most
Mhm.
famous one in the world. One of the design principles of innovation is called cross-pollination.
Mhm.
That is the bringing of ideas from Shakespeare to math, from math to computer science, from English literature to buildings.
Yeah.
That's the idea that human constructs are universal, and we can't be stupid by narrowing our view to the view of a horse or an ant or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's
Well, I mean,
really
isn't
important.
that how they invented? I mean, there's so many things that have been invented by like you for like birds, right? And how there are birds that are too heavy to take off, but like they get some sort of like undercurrent, and then that like invented drone technology because you could use this, and you're like, excuse me, what? Like that's how, and we could make helicopters more efficient if we use this other type of,
Yeah,
starting point. And I'm like, wow,
so true.
just by looking at birds,
So
like
true.
that's amazing.
As you know, I know nothing about drones, but so I don't know if you knew this, but you know how Viagra came about? It was, I
Weren't
think
they
it was,
looking for like a blood pressure medicine?
yes. And you know what? You
Yeah,
know what happened? The men didn't give back the medicine. So you do a double blind, you do a double blind study,
sure.
and then at the end you're like, okay, we're done with the study. Give us back your whatever, your placebo pills, your sugar
Yeah.
pills. They don't know who's who, right? It's double
Yeah, yeah.
blind, and give us everything back. Everybody who had the real drug as opposed to the placebo did not give back the medicine. So
That's
everybody
hilarious.
knew they had the real medicine, not because their heart was doing better.
Because their heart was
Yeah,
doing
their
their
heart was doing much better.
so better.
So they're like, what's happening here?
Yeah.
And then they did a follow-up study, and they're like, holy shit, we just hit the jackpot.
Right. Well, I mean, that's also kind of how they found GLP-1s, right?
Mm.
Is like they were looking for some other intervention, maybe just for diabetes. But then it turns out that like
I didn't.
GLP-1s also have a lot of influence on all kinds of addictive behaviors. People drink less. They have less compulsions to gamble. Right? I mean, you kind
Wow,
of like
I've
lose
not.
your
Oh
compulsions.
wow, I didn't hear about this. I need to read up.
Yeah, it's super duper interesting.
So we
Like,
have this amazing thing. It's
yeah.
by mistake. Like we didn't plan it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's science on some level, right? Is like looking for novel applications of
Yes.
other of existing tools too, right?
Does this mean that science doesn't work? I mean, we're just figuring shit out by mistake. Is science kind of all? I went to the dark side for a moment there.
I know. I mean, I think that is science is just experimentation and saying, "Hey, I have this idea. Does it work? Does it not work?" Right? And then, hey, did it work for something else? And that's what I
And
love
hey,
about
did
it.
we get
I
lucky?
actually studied science before I went into government, right? And I was talking yesterday with another ED manager who used to be a biochemist. And I think it just comes down to problem solving, right? If this didn't work, what might? Or what was good out of this thing that didn't work? Right? And that's cool. That's the cool part of science.
You know what? What's the problem with human beings? Let's go there.
Self-awareness? I don't know.
Yes, yes, 100% yes, 1,000 times yes. That's not the one I was going for. We think in binary terms, right? We think in good and bad and right and wrong, but that's not how the world works, right? And in fact, the
Right.
scientific method is all about, oh, let me prove this to be wrong, which
Yeah.
sounds weird. Like, why? So I'm trying to prove something wrong. Like, that sounds weird.
Yeah.
So that's a weird thing that I think the general public sometimes doesn't wrap their head around it, because it's so weird that, like, why would that be true? Why, if you're a scientist, you're smart,
Yeah.
right? So if you're smart, you know the answer. So give me the answer.
Well, you're right, but that's yeah. Yeah. I mean, people really do like simple answers, and I get it. I mean, that's how you end up in so many of the problems that we face today. Also politically, also in health and fitness and whatever, right? Is like if you tell me this thing, I will do it. And that thing should work. And you're like, okay, well, there's a lot more nuance, right? Like we want to reduce carbon emissions. Okay, but we want to reduce plastic pollution. Plastic is bad. It goes into the ocean. All right, so
and
let's
into
use
our
glass. Oh,
bloodstream.
it turns out that raises carbon emissions. What? Like there's so many trade-offs that I don't know. I was reading an article today and it was talking about like instead of asking people, would you pay more to reduce emissions? Like having people really start to understand what trade-offs are. That I mean, look, I mean, I said self-awareness.
Heresy! Burn her!
Everybody wants
She's a
everything.
witch!
I know, but trade-offs are really important. And when you just present things as binary, like we can have this or
Yeah,
we can't,
yes.
it's like, well, what am I
Oh, Amanda, the
not
next thing you're
having?
gonna ask politicians not to speak in bite-sized, sentences. Come on now.
I'm an elected official and it is very hard to work in this environment. I will
I'm gonna
tell
get
you that.
this show is gonna get you fired. But why politicians are incredibly smart? This is a very rarely known truth. The other rarely known truth is that politicians will be at each other's throats, and then 5 minutes later they'll be thinking together on how to solve an actual problem. But it's kind of funny because there's this like public show of like we're bad, they're good, we're good, they're bad. But then the politicians are working together like every single day,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they won't admit it to the public or to people in their party, but they kind of like other people on the other side. Like it's kind of weird. Like why do we need to be so subversive, so like extremist? Why do we have to be like they're the
Yeah.
devil? Like why can't we just be like, no, I actually enjoying working with this person, he's reasonable. But
I
yeah,
think you
they
still see that. I think you still see that at the local level and even at the
fair,
state level.
that's fair,
But the problem is that like our national politics have become very,
very
very
bad.
like polarized
Yeah,
and they seep down. So it's like
yeah,
even if you're a really reasonable local Democrat or Republican
yeah,
or third party, you're still tagged with this sort of national nonsense
yeah,
that's nonsensical. And at the end of the day, politics does influence the things that get made, right?
yes,
We started zoning, right? And
yes,
part of the reason we have zoning is because there are politicians in these local towns that say, I don't want
yes,
that.
yes,
Period. I don't want
yes,
that in my backyard. I don't want that in my town.
yes,
And maybe a neighboring town will say, I do want that.
yes,
Maybe another neighboring town will say, oh, I don't want that either. And then it has to go much further, right? But when you have a whole bunch of people saying no or a whole bunch of people saying yes, you get a totally different landscape than if you have different preferences in different places.
right. So this is an incredibly interesting problem because even in one community, there's a lot of dynamic trade-off where if you help one part of the community, you're quite literally not helping another because there's a finite budget. These decisions are incredibly difficult. So in European countries where drugs are free, the way that they do that is they have to decide what the basket is. So what are the drugs that are free? Because if it's not in the basket, like we can't pay for everything. So there needs to be a basket basically of the free drugs. And then there's a special committee that's made out of like, really smart
Mm.
people that are basically deciding who's going to live and who's going to die. Like, I don't want to be on that committee.
No, you don't want to be on that committee. And that's why they try to like go to data, right? That's why you get what do they call them? It's like actuaries, like that's why you get the actuarial tables.
These are the people that give dollar values to people's lives. I'm not a huge fan, but the actuary approach is one approach, but we need to use heart with math, not just math.
Yeah.
So there's
I
a
agree. I mean, I think we started at that premise of you can't be a good scientist
yes,
without heart, right? You can't be a good mathematician without heart.
this is true. This is
It
true.
would be not it would be nice to be able to solve problems without emotions, but people are people, right? It doesn't work like that.
There's all these movies where the aliens come and they're like, oh, like your emotions are your weakness, humans. And then they're like, no, our emotions are what make us strong.
It's our strength.
It's our strength.
But I do think it is our
It
strength.
is.
It is
It
our
is.
weakness. I mean, I don't know, right?
It's
I,
both.
I think that was one of my very first leadership lessons when I was in my first job out of college was Amanda, you go really hard, which is a real advantage, but also you go really hard, which can put people off. I'm like, oh, that's interesting, right?
Isn't it wonderful that our advantages are also our disadvantages at the same time?
Yeah.
So if you
Yeah.
criticize somebody for their weaknesses, you're criticizing them for their beauty as well. Ouch.
Ari, you should make that like a whole theme. That was good.
Oh, Lord. I don't know. Anyway, this podcast is about helping government prepare for the impending doom of AI, which will
That's right.
last for some years and then hopefully blow over. But
Yeah.
so, okay. So how do we prepare for this, collapsing of industries? Obviously, there's going to be new industries that emerge, but we need to figure that out. So we need the innovation to figure that out
Yeah.
and create those industries. We need to get ahead of the curve. We can't wait until the industries collapse to train our people and prepare them for this future. We
Right.
need to we need to redo our universities. Like it almost feels like we need to reprogram the entire government operating system.
Good luck. I don't know if you've noticed how slow government moves, but it's designed that way so
Well,
that we think
for good
through
reason.
everything very, very closely.
Yes, for good reason, by the way.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's intentional,
it is
right? Is it
intentional.
intentional?
But okay, so we need to move fast, but we've designed the system to move slow intentionally. We don't want people like changing government overnight. That can be that that happened in Russia and in China, and like that can be dangerous. So this is an internal conflict or a paradigm in how government works that is going to either save us or fail us. How do you even think about this?
It's a very, very good point. I mean, I do think a lot of people are thinking about this. There are, task forces on AI in education, not only in using it for teaching, but also in teaching how kids how to use it,
Yes.
right? And I once expressed in my like economic development newsletter that I was not a huge fan of AI. And somebody who I did not expect to be a fan of AI said, Amanda, like this is how I use it. I want to show you this. And he showed me some really interesting things. And I thought, gosh, it really can be a thought partner and it really can
Yes.
make certain things much more efficient and save that time of, I would call it like data entry. It's like
Yeah.
the data entry of the 70s, right?
Yeah.
When we moved to computers. But the truth is that there's going to be a part of the industry that in part of the people who lose their jobs
Yes.
and those jobs aren't coming back,
No.
right? It's the same people who, programmed Fortran.
Yeah.
Once if
I
they
met a
didn't learn the
lady.
next thing, right? Like,
I met a lady at the Apple store today, and she's like, "Oh, I'm locked out," and I'm like, "I'm not an Apple employee, but sure, I'll help you." And she's in her 80s, and we're talking, and I'm. So my wife says that some people are socially awkward. I'm awkwardly social. So my son is like that too. So basically, we're talking and we're becoming friends, and so she tells me she basically programmed on the IBM punch card machines. And I was like,
cool.
whoa, that's an amazing part of history. And like
Yeah.
nobody is doing punch card programming anymore, right? Those people don't have a job anymore. And that's probably okay. So if the people that were doing punch cards didn't have a job, and now the people that are doing this on a keyboard, which is me, by the way, I'm a computer scientist, I'm a developer, I'm a programmer, won't have a job anymore, maybe that's okay too. But my question is, as government, as local economic development, we want something to happen so the shock in our community will be less, right? We want to
Yeah.
reduce that economic shock.
Yeah.
And it's about education, it's about other things. If you had a magic wand and you had to pick one like area of government to like redo perfectly overnight and you didn't have the slowness of government to deal with, obviously we have to deal with that. But if you could have a magic wand, what would be that area of government that you would rewrite the operating system overnight?
Hmm. That's a very interesting question.
Only easy questions today, Amanda.
You know, it's probably would do something around like the land use piece and building plans. It stops some innovation from happening because it can be really expensive to get your plans approved, right? And making sure that you're meeting all the codes and meeting all that stuff, right? And our planners should be able to think about bigger, better things than, oh, okay, have I done plan check? Have I checked all the things? Did I see all the things? I think that that's an area that is ripe for it, that you could put, architectural plans into an AI and say, look at this and compare it to the 2021 California Building Code.
Is
And
this in spec?
right, right, and our, local building codes. What does it mean?
The irony is that the planners would lose their jobs, but the economy would be accelerated by the fact that that process is accelerated. That's the irony.
Well, but I don't know that they would lose their jobs, right? Because it would free them up for like bigger idea planning, right?
Fair.
That's something that's
Fair.
that's tough. I'm a one man shop, right? And as you said, we were talking about trade-offs, right? When I spend time working with our large industries, I'm not spending time talking with our restaurants and seeing how they're
Yes.
doing because I
Yes.
don't have enough time in the day to do that. So what could our planners be working on that could actually transform the city or transform the community that they don't get to work on very much
Yes.
because we don't have enough time for that.
So Amanda is getting the roughest treatment that I've ever given anybody because she can handle it. She's
I
incredibly
can. I'm
intelligent.
enjoying
You
it. I love
can,
it.
you totally can. So basically, I said to Amanda, like, oh, like you want to take people's jobs away, and what she said, really, which is brilliant, is that demand will meet supply, and that is absolutely brilliant. And in government, demand can eat supply, it can meet supply easily because you don't just go and fire people. Unfortunately, in the commercial environment, that does happen because you have share
It does.
prices. So
Yeah.
I obviously said something that was untrue and wrong. Sometimes I do that just for fun.
But it's not entirely untrue, right? I mean, yes, people are trying to hit their share prices, and that
Yes.
is a factor, right? But I think everybody in government, we are limited by tax base,
Yes.
right? And the the limitations make it harder or easier to do different things, right? You make all these trade-offs. Maybe you could do a lot more for your residents if you spent less on doing plan check, right? You could actually have more efforts to we'd free up funding for infrastructure upgrades that would lead to more businesses being able to move here because they would be able to handle higher energy output. I mean, we're struggling a lot in California with energy. What does it look like to have the infrastructure for nuclear? Couldn't do that right now. I mean, like it's not fathomable.
If you're
Like
stuck in
small
the
scale
muck of the
nuclear, right?
everyday, how do you do the important things? You don't get to that.
Yeah. Yeah, you never get to that. And it's interesting because in another organization that I work in, we're doing a strategic plan and people are asking why are we hiring consultants to help with it? And it's like, well, because we still have to keep the boat rowing, right? We still have to keep going, but we're also doing this transformative stuff. The person who's doing this really can't be the person who's doing that. There has to be more capacity to
This
do this new thing,
consultant is
you know?
hired for 3 months, and this is the only thing they do, and they're experts. And we're running the show, and we can't stop and do something like. I don't think
Yeah,
people get that. And you hire that consultant for 3 months. Sure, they're expensive, but you're not hiring a team of 5 people to work full
right.
time. That's way more expensive, right?
Right. Right. But
Like,
people get afraid about that. They worry that
yeah.
well, you could have had staff, and you're like, well, we could have, but what does it look like? It's having that additional extra capacity for a
But
short
that's
period of time
unfair
is pretty
because
special.
you have a budget, you have a tax base, and oh, we could have had that. Okay, but then okay, are we having less officers on the streets, or are we having less safer streets? Like, or are we having less teachers, or are we not fixing the roads? Like, you decide. And then they're like,
Right, but people don't like trade-offs. They don't really like to be faced with that.
no,
And I mean, I can understand why. I mean, it's why for all the stuff that politicians have to do, I mean, they do have to make hard decisions
yeah.
and say, well, in this budget, this is what we're going to focus on, and this is what I think is most important for the next 2 years or whatever. And that's a hard position to be in because there's going to be a lot of people who are unhappy. I don't know what again, like politics. One of my favorite phrases in politics is being a successful politician or being a successful government person is disappointing people at a rate that they can withstand.
I love that. I love that. I've never heard that before, by the way. That's
Mm.
beautiful. I had a lady that was in the same school, her son, my son, same school, and she was an avid political activist. And I find sadistic joy in whoever the political person in front of me playing the other side.
Uh-huh.
So you're a Democrat, I'm going to be a
That's
Republican.
very, very University of Chicago of you.
Yeah, that's true. This is true. So you're a Republican, I'm a Democrat. Whatever you
Yeah.
are, I'm the
Whatever you are,
opposite.
I'm gonna be the other
Whatever
one.
you are, I'm playing the opposite. It's like I used to be a dungeon master when I was a kid. So
Okay.
so this idea of telling stories and thinking through scenarios is obviously
Sure.
very U Chicago. So she's like, she was playing side X, I was playing side Y, and I'm like, "Ah, that's brilliant. Let's do that. Where do we get the money from?" So she's like, well, taxpayers are paying for it. I'm like, we're increasing taxes? And she was like, no. So where are we taking it from? So I went down this discovery kind of going down this path of saying dynamic trade-offs without saying
Hmm.
dynamic trade-offs. It
Right.
didn't end well.
No, it doesn't, right? I mean,
Doesn't.
it doesn't. And
It's
that's
easy to shout
that's
slogans.
science, but that's science, right? Because you're going to get to this point where you fail
Yeah.
because you are going to fail somebody.
Yes. Yes.
And I would say that the whole like definition of equity is trying to fail different people regularly. Right? I mean, yeah, that's
Okay,
that's that's
let's
that's I just came up with that on the spot. But right, like you don't want to keep failing the same community again and again,
yeah.
right?
Well,
And
they'll
so
uprise, right?
how can we yeah, I mean, or how do we continue to lift up communities
Yeah.
and give them all a chance, right?
Yeah. If you fail the same community all the time, then they will uprise, and that's civil war basically. That's not good. But here's my argument. If you look at the economic model of equity
Hmm.
over 1,000 years, the biggest thing that created equity over 1,000 years or redistribution of wealth was not social activism. It's
No, I would
technology.
agree. Yeah.
So it's the printing press, it's the wheel, it's the horse. So
Yeah.
all of these technologies, right? It's putting hoofs on the horse. It's the internet. It's computers.
Yeah.
And now it's AI. So
Yeah.
sure, it's going to be horrible for some amount of years. I don't know. I don't quote me on how many because nobody knows. But it's going to be absolutely horrible. But when we look at the long run, sorry, that's an economics term, it's going to be really good. There's going to be a massive redistribution of equity. And what we've seen is that over the last 1,000 years, we have many more millionaires today than we have in the past, which is a good thing because it used to be that we had one millionaire, it was the king. That's it. And everybody else was peasants. And now you can become a self-made king or queen by getting a good education, coming up with a good idea, building your software on Cursor or whatever lovable, and then, hiring a good salesperson, and then you're a millionaire. Good job. That to me, that feels like the freedom we've never had before.
I would agree. It's interesting though, because I don't know, you talk about golden handcuffs a lot when you talk
Yeah.
about money, right? And that people start making a lot of decisions to get more money instead of making decisions that are good for
Yes.
society or humanity
Yes.
or whatever, right? Just that the whole because right, like let's say, I mean, I think I'd be a great philanthropist if I became a millionaire. I'd give it to all good causes and I'd invest in all the right things, right? And but who am I to say that those are the right things? Right. And by having this sort of like philanthropy based equity model and saying like, okay, we can accrue wealth. Like I'm a big proponent of taxes, which I know that many people are not. But having lived in Europe,
Amanda,
I
you
do
lost
think
all
that
of the
there's
audience. She said she
I
wants
know.
taxes. Like, well, taxes give
It's
us
not that it's
schools.
yeah, I love schools.
You
I
want to
love
have your kids at home all day? Is that what you want? I
do
don't.
you really want that?
I
I don't think you
don't.
want that. But, you know, having lived in Europe, right, there are higher taxes,
Yes.
at least on the income level. They have different kinds of
Yes.
tax structure. I think actually the US and Europe are generally pretty equally tax burdened on some level, but in a different way. I just think that, and I guess that's the question is, right, there's that institutional trust there too, that your government is trying to make decisions that are right for the
Some.
most people at the
Yeah.
right time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
That's
don't
fair.
think there's Americans don't necessarily have that ethos or that belief. They
No.
do on the local level most of the time, but
Yeah.
not
Well, it's
not
easier
as
on
it
the
goes.
local level because you're not on TV. You don't need to smear the other, person on
Yeah,
TV, so you can work together. Because, like, I don't know. I don't want to say nobody cares, but it's easier to work when you're not under the spotlight from that perspective.
I would agree.
Yeah.
And these are your neighbors. You
Yes.
know, it's
Yes.
really hard to get. It's really easy to get mad at somebody who lives in California when you live in Ohio or
Yeah.
vice versa, right?
Are they even people? Those people in
Are they
California?
even
Are they
right?
even people? Oh my
Gosh,
lord.
our good weather and beautiful. No, I'm just kidding.
So okay, okay.
I say this as a person who has family in Ohio. Like I love Ohio, right? And it's
The
different.
Ohio State.
The Ohio State.
The
You know, I went
Ohio.
to Ohio last weekend and they are still using styrofoam. And like the perspective of like coming from California where it's like compostable everything.
Yeah.
And I get there and I'm like, wow, styrofoam, man, I
Forget
haven't seen this in
California. I mean Europe.
years.
Like, come on.
Oh, years.
So when I go to restaurants, I'm like, no, give me that, not the styrofoam. And I have to ask for it here in Colorado. It's not a thing. But
Wow.
yeah. So Redwood City is mighty pretty, right?
It is. We are climate best by government test. That is our logo, our motto.
Is that better than what was her name? Jane, the Chicago, the Windy City?
Oh, I don't know. Climate best by government test. I mean, it is literally 72 here almost all the time. It is beautiful. It
It's
genuinely
the
is beautiful.
Camelot of, right? It's that song, the Camelot song.
No,
This
I'll
is
have to go listen to
you
it.
gotta listen to it. It's
Okay.
like life is perfect in Camelot. The weather is always perfect. Like everything's perfect in Camelot. It's like one of these old, old, old things.
Okay. Okay.
Oh my God, Amanda, this has been such a delight. We've had so much fun together. I hope the audience, I'm sure the audience enjoyed it too. Let me ask you the difficult question, which is the only scripted question on the show,
Okay.
but it's hard. If you
I
had
mean, you don't feel like the other ones you've asked me about are hard.
Those were warm-ups for you, Amanda.
All right, all right, all right.
So my mother would tell me, "It's not hard, it's difficult. This is hard."
That's true. Actually, when I was learning Polish, they're very specific about the definition of trudno versus like ciężki. It's like hard, difficult, heavy. You know, it's like fascinating.
If you had to go back to the most difficult part of your life and give
Hmm.
yourself some advice, what would that be?
Ooh, I've had a lot of difficult parts in my life, mostly family things, and I would say that you get to choose your own family. That's the advice that I would give my younger self. And anybody who's going through family stuff is that you get to choose other people that you get to hang out with and find those people and then they're really great.
Amanda, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been an absolute delight, and you will get something that most other guests don't get, an invite to come back.
All right, I'm here. I'm here
There,
for
there
it.
are only 3 guests that have come back so far, and there's only 1 that has come back for a 3rd time.
Oh wow.
Yeah, this doesn't
Dude, I'm
happen.
gonna have to go to listen to that person's podcast. That probably
It's
sounds great.
Paul. What's his name? Paul. Paul. He's an Australian. He's the CEO of a company called Octopus Deploy, I think it is. He is brilliant. He is so much fun to talk to, and so are you.
Thanks. Have a great day. Have a great weekend.